Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I am in Long Beach. Kind of an away game for me. I'm at the Long Beach Convention Center, and we're at the IANA conference. That's the IANA Intermodal Expo 2025. I got a very special guest, Russell Jones. So today's topic is private fleet net zero. The Deadhead is dead with my friend Russ Jones. How's it going, Russ?
Doing very well, Joe. It's great to be here. Thank you very much.
I'm excited to talk to you about this. I've spent a few. We had dinner last night, and we've been hanging out here at the conference. So I got to know you and your company, and I love what you guys are doing. So, Russ, please introduce yourself and your company and what you guys do.
Sure. So, again, I'm Russ Jones. I'm the CEO and founder of Private Fleet Net Zero, and what we do is we help private and dedicated trucking fleets share their backhaul capacity, which is frequently empty. That's like 45% of all trucks. And we match that to savvy brokers that want higher quality capacity at a lower cost.
Nice. So, we should talk about IANA since we're at the IANA conference. Why are you at the IANA conference? Why is this so special to you?
So what we're doing is a little different. Is we are with the guidance of a huge freight forwarder, a CMA CGM, starting to take van over-the-road loads and put them into container-based capacity. That could be a container-based capacity, say from Indianapolis back to Chicago, or it could be, say, from Reno back to the Port of Oakland. And we're adding more and more of those dray container capacities, as well as we're starting to work with some long-haul door-to-door intermodal providers so we can provide a practical intermodal option that will save 30-40% for our buyers.
Yep. And I know, the name Private Fleet Net Zero, obviously sustainability is one of the key tenets of your business. We are in Long Beach, and I just talked to Dr. Noel Hasagaba. Sustainability is super important, not only to the state of California, but especially to the ports. California is beautiful, their weather is gorgeous, but they do have a smog problem. And the problem they have, the rest of us, I'm in the Midwest, we don't have that. So we take for granted the emissions just go somewhere and we're all set. Here, it impacts their life. So over the last generation, 25 years, they have been really focused on sustainability. When I talked to Dr. Noel earlier today, he talked about sustainability being super important. And by the way, right in the background there, we just both passed the IMC electric vehicle, and we're seeing the future here.
Yeah, it's really important. Forbes reported last year that the large trucks generate they're less than 6% of the vehicles on the highway, but they generate a quarter of the nation's greenhouse gases and 57% of the deadly fine pollution particulates. So it's a really big issue having these big trucks to run around empty.
Yeah, and by the way, you just hit the key, empty. It's one thing to say, we got to get those off the road. Well, no, we all kind of got used to living indoors and eating every day, and those trucks are delivering the stuff that allows us to have the lifestyle we have. I'm sure we could all cut back a little more, but I think the bigger opportunity, rather than asking everyone to cut back, is can we have fewer empty miles? And we're going to talk about that for the rest of the hour here. But sustainability, I sometimes joke about this, that there's a lot of companies that say, we're sustainable. You're like, you're sustainable, but you sell a $7 cup of coffee and it probably costs you 30 cents. So there's plenty of money for branding where you can talk about how sustainable you are. In our business, trucking companies aren't making a lot of money. Brokers aren't making a lot of money. And so the idea that you say, hey, how much are you guys spending on sustainability this year? It's not a good question. The only way we can do sustainability is if it also helps us save money. And your solution, you can do both.
Yeah, Joe, I'm really excited about that. I think you just hit it right. It's really a triple win. We're helping the private and dedicated fleets generate more revenue than they would get otherwise, basically acting as a free agent. And then for the brokers who are under incredible pressures for margins after a 3-year freight recession, we're helping them get savings of 10 to 30% on their truckloads, which will triple their end margin, or EBITDA margin. And then lastly, we're on a path to save 2 million tons of CO2, which is the same as 30 million tree equivalents. We're really excited about what we're doing.
Yeah, we'll get into more about that in a minute. Russ, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started Private Fleet Net Zero.
Thanks. So I grew up in Wisconsin, a small little town in Wisconsin. No crime, it was beautiful. And then went to school in Boston, and then worked as an AT&T sales guy. Went and got an MBA at Harvard Business School, and then came out to Silicon Valley. Worked for a hot company called Adaptech. The stock went from 7 to 70 in my first 5 years. That enabled me to buy a nice house in Palo Alto and start my first company called ClearVox Communications, which pioneered the market for headsets for mobile phones. We became the category winner, shipping millions of units. We had well over 10,000 retail locations, and I sold that company to Plantronics. Then I did a second company, which was a social give back called Sentinel Vision, and that pioneered the market for vision-based security systems for people that live in apartments that have a far higher incidence of crime. Think of Ring.com too early. Then my third company was Cargo Chief, and I remember all the issues I had when I had my headset business or getting trucking capacity. And so I said, I'm going to go solve that problem, and started Cargo Chief as a tech-enabled freight brokerage focused on small shippers. Well, very quickly we discovered that the big shippers had the same care abouts as the small shippers. The company grew rapidly from zero to tens of millions of dollars in just a few years. And then in 2017, other brokers said, Russ, I want to license your multi-patent award-winning technology. And when I heard that for the sixth time, it reminded me of a distant relative that came to the California gold rush, not to be a gold miner, but to sell pickaxes and shovels to gold miners. And I said, what would happen if we took 100 brokers' data and brought it all together and made it available to those 100 brokers? I thought that'd be really powerful for those brokers. It would level the playing field from those brokers to the mega brokers. So that's what we did. Cargo Chief grew rapidly. Cargo Chief helps freight brokers buy truckload capacity from for hire trucking fleets that are their trusted, vetted in-network carriers. That company today now has over 1,000 buyers and billions of dollars of freight spend. We did a pilot with Amazon's private fleet along the way, and that pilot was successful. And I started doing some homework like, oh my gosh, private fleet trucks are 45% of all trucks. That's huge. And I then had a number of conversations and started looking at statistics from the ATA, the American Trucking Association, and like the private fleet trucks are empty like 80% of the time is my math. It's incredible. So this is an amazing opportunity. So Cargo Chief wanted to focus in on its existing model. So I said, great, let me start up a new company, and I give you some of the founding shares of the new company, and I'm going to take the intellectual property for private fleet. And so that became Private Fleet Net Zero, started about a year ago. And we, the first quartile, Q4 last year, we designed the system. Q1, we built the system and got into alpha testing. Q2, we got into a beta test and started the beta test. Well, we've ramped up rapidly. We now have almost 50 fleets and several dozen buyers on the platform. Well over almost $25 billion of freight spend is on the platform already. We're just getting going. And we have 10,000 lanes and maybe 25,000 trucks amongst our fleet. So it's already quite sizable.
Yeah, and we've talked quite a bit over the last few days, the challenges that the industry's seeing right now. And again, every brand you talk to says, what are you doing for sustainability? So if you want to work with the largest brands, they're going to ask you. It's not just going to be a slide in your PowerPoint deck that says we value the environment. You need to start measuring something. And I always say, for me, I always measured on-time performance, some sort of cost measure. I like to measure billing accuracy, damage. Add one more metric. And if you don't have all the information that you need on sustainability, just get directionally correct. Do something. Just start saying, hey, I know how many miles per gallon that truck gets. Whatever it is, start. Because when that big brand asks you, what have you been doing? You can't say, well, we're going to start next month. Right. We're starting right now because you asked. And you also, let's face it, margins are under pressure for the trucking companies. Margins are under pressure for the freight brokers, it's not like you're going to say, oh, we just set aside a whole bunch of money to do this. You have to be able to save the money. You got to be able to, wrong way to say it, it has to be business case beyond the sustainability. And I think we all want to be cleaner and greener, but we also need to make a lot of money or some money, for God's sakes.
Well, it even goes even farther, Joe. The public companies are being asked by the SEC to report out on climate every quarter. So imagine you're the CEO of some giant public company, and now you're like, I'm meeting with the SEC next week. I've told them something new the last 17 quarters in a row. What am I going to say that's new?
Yes.
Right? And now they can now say, when they're part of Private Fleet Net Zero, we're working with Private Fleet Net Zero to decarbonize trucking. It's a big statement.
In our very polarized environment, people say, well, the Trump administration doesn't care about the environment as much as the Biden administration. Forget your politics for a moment. The big brands that you're talking to.
Right, your customers.
The customers ask for it. And so I've had a number of people who go, oh, I'm not all on that everything has to be green. It's like, you don't have to. Just listen to what your customer wants. And I guarantee you,
at least some of their customers could care.
well, one of the larger trucking companies, Covenant, I was talking to, they said, yeah, we went to our 10 largest customers and say, do you have sustainability goals? And every single one did.
Wow. Okay.
Top 10. And that Covenant's a very large trucking company. And so you can act as if, oh, I'm being forced to do this by one government organization or another. No, your customer, they care.
Joe, it reminds me, I was in Shanghai a few years ago, and I was in a hotel that was 60 stories high, and there was so much smog, you couldn't even see the ground. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah. I've been there. I was in China, and I'm not to be gross, but you can taste the charcoal, and you remind me of coal in the mouth. They were burning coal.
There's something for clean air.
Yeah. So, getting back to it, there's three big problems I want to talk to you about that you guys solve. So, what's the first problem that you guys solve for your customers?
So the first problem, our customers are buyers of truckload capacity. Almost all of them are freight brokers. And there are challenges that because the trucking industry has been depressed for the last 3 years. One, their margins are lower on a dollar basis because the cost of a truck is lower, and most of them do a percentage buy. Secondly, it's easier for the shipper to get a trucking company directly, so the need for a brokerage is less than when the market's tight. And so that double effect has made it very hard for these brokers to enjoy any margins. So they're really looking for a way to improve margins. Private Fleet Net Zeros helps brokers buy truckload capacity and more profitably, generating savings from 10 to 30%.
Well, why is that? Why would your solution get me a cheaper truck?
Well, let's talk about Sherwin-Williams. So Sherwin-Williams, they have a factory, say, in Pittsburgh, and that truck leaves every Wednesday full to the distribution center in Chicago. And that's critical. And they needed to have that. They need to have their deliveries happen on time. During COVID, when it was very hard to get a truck, Sherwin-Williams expanded its trucking fleet, like all the other private fleets. Now that COVID's over, many private fleets have unutilized trucks or lower utilization of those trucks. So then the truck returns back, in my example, on Thursday, back from Chicago back to Pittsburgh, and it's not really focused on getting a backhaul load. They're really thinking about the next load, which is Friday. So most of the private fleets, they're willing to haul the freight at a discount to market because they're really focused on their internal loads. And what requires and why our system works, Joe, is that you need to have a precise match for Sherwin-Williams. It can't be Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. It's got to be Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. It's got
their top priority is supporting their own freight, so they will forego making any money. If you give them, say, 90% chance you'll be home for your next load, not good enough.
Right. They have to be home, so it requires precision. Our buying network of $25 billion of freight spend is bigger than any one individual buyer. As a result, our ability to match a private fleet backhaul is far better than anybody else because we can sift through all those loads to find the right match.
Yeah. By the way, I remember talking years ago. I won't mention the name of the company. We'll say the second largest shipper in the country, and they said, "Oh yeah, I finally got through to them," and they said, I was working with a trucking company. They was representing a trucking company. They said, "Okay, Joe, give me a list of your backhauls." I said, "Well, I want to talk to you about this lane, that lane," and they go, "Give me a list of your backhauls." And basically, what they were saying is, "We want really inexpensive prices." That was, we're not interested in your in giving you the forward move, only the backhaul. And I was thinking, we're not going to make any money here. Because they only want to play with backhauls, and so backhauls a lot of times just you don't get the premium price for it. You're not even looking for the premium price. You just got to get home.
Right.
So let me ask this: when I think of private fleet, I don't know about Sherwin-Williams. A lot of times they'll say it's a private fleet, but we have XYZ transportation manages that for us. Sometimes they might even own the trucks.
So you're talking about a dedicated fleet. Yeah. So you have a large, sophisticated carrier, and they have a customer who says, "I need 100 trucks," and you, the carrier, own the truck. You employ the driver. You maintain the truck, but we're going to tell that truck where to go, and that's what a dedicated fleet.
Right.
And those dedicated fleets behave very much like a private fleet. They're mostly empty on their backhauls, and they're hungry, and they're actually a better match for the buyer because the dedicated fleet can recover faster if there's a mechanical issue.
Well, they're going to be typically newer vehicles. If you're a brand and your name is on the side, you're not going to have a 30-year-old truck there.
Yeah, no.
It's not going to be dilapidated. And I've experienced this. A lot of times they'll say, you can't use a trailer that's 10 years old if it's got dent, and they're very persnickety because it's their brand.
It's their brand, and that's also an advantage for the buyer because when you work with a private fleet, you're going to have more maintenance manuals, procedures, newer trucks, and better paid drivers, so the level of service from a private fleet is higher. So that helps the broker to reduce their customer churn because they're going to have a higher experience of service with the private fleet.
So you help brokers get that capacity, which is 45% of the trucks on the road are private fleets. You help them get that backhaul capacity. So they're going to make. I'm just going to make this up. An extra $100 or $200 on that load.
Yes. Well, more importantly, is they might triple their end margin. A broker, once you pay the carrier and then you pay your salaries and commissions and insurance and rent, you might make 2 or 3% of that first, say, $1,000. You might make only $20 on a $1,000 load. Now we're going to make it so you could triple your margin, maybe make 120. I mean, it's a really big deal for the broker.
Yeah. So I talked to you over the last couple of days, and you said the biggest brokers out there are already doing this because they have tons of people and the technology and the relationships. They're already doing this. So if somebody's listening and saying, it's an option, but why isn't everyone doing it? The very biggest brokers are already doing this.
So, Joe, you're totally right. I'm not going to give the name, but one of the brokers I talked to, 25% of their truckload spend is with private fleets, and that's an incredible advantage.
And that's one of the big brokers?
Yeah, one of the very largest. And people are saying the large brokers are taking share. The reason why is because they can offer a higher level of service at a lower cost, and part of that is because they're doing business with private fleets.
Yeah.
It's an unlock, if you will, for the mid-sized brokers or the large brokers, not the giant mega brokers that already know about this.
Yes. Yeah, I can't imagine he was happy at having dinner with you and hearing your new venture here.
Yeah, so it's a great way, and we help. But what's interesting is the very largest brokers, a lot of their buying with a private fleet is manual. So we can help even someone who's doing a lot of business. Yes. And what happens is, the private fleet, Sherwin-Williams gives the big giant broker, they give their backhaul lanes to Joe or to Jim at big broker. And Jim doesn't share that with his teammates because Jim wants this incredible capacity that's at lower cost so he can make more margin and buy, another boat or something.
Yeah. So I think freight fraud has been such a big issue. Cargo theft is on everybody's lips here at the IANA conference. Everybody, and by the way, they're talking about cargo theft across the entire supply chain. I think you're a lot less likely to have cargo theft if you're using a private fleet.
Absolutely. Private fleets have 1/3 the accidents of a regular fleet. And Sherwin-Williams is not going to steal your freight. Cargo theft, I think people said it's at an all-time high. It was up 24% last year. I mean, that's a real issue.
They're also going to have longer-term drivers. They're going to have safer drivers. They're going to have higher standards on all that.
That's right.
And I've run across private fleets in the past where the bar is higher for those companies in terms of, again, the trucks are nicer because their brand is often on the side. Also, I'm an automotive guy originally. I think we spend 5% of transportation's 5% of revenue. So when somebody said, "Oh, I can save you 20%," I'm like, I don't need that kind of risk. What are you talking to me about that? I just, why would I address that? It's not on their mind. Transportation costs are on all our minds. Big brands, transportation costs is important, but it's not their top priority. Transportation people, of course, in there, and for the private plan,
For a broker,
they're
it's
gonna
make it or break it.
Well, no, but I mean also, the guys who are buying at Walmart, obviously they care about cost, but the Walmart as a company, it is not their top priority. So we talked about margin pressure. Talk about these empty backhauls. Do these people, these private brands, do they look and say, we have a problem with backhauls or lack thereof?
So the brands that are savvy, a report came out that said 2/3 of the top private fleets have a for-hire authority. So most of the sophisticated private fleets that have a sizable fleet are looking to haul other people's goods. So they're open to it. They recognize the opportunity, recognize the ecology of trying to eliminate having an empty truck go down the highway. They also see it as free revenue, but they're not, for the most part, sophisticated on how to go get.
I wouldn't imagine they're not aggressive about it. I guarantee you that.
Right. So we make it easy for them. So when we talk to a private fleet and we say we have a whole network, and you just tell us the lanes, either static lanes or dynamic lanes. The static lane is every Monday, hey, I'm available from Chicago to Pittsburgh. A dynamic lane, hey, next Tuesday, I'm available Milwaukee to St. Louis. We absorb all that easily, and then we make that available to all these different buyers. So from the private fleet's point of view, this is an incredible find. Here's this free agent that's super tech enabled that's making our capacity available to everybody.
Right. And I don't know how they measure their... I don't know how they measure themselves, but you're saying, hey, this is found revenue.
It's found revenue, and they frequently have metrics around empty miles. So they have their metrics as well, and we help them improve their metrics literally for free.
Yeah, and you can also look at it this way and say, you don't have to get the bottom dollar for it, because you just say, I'm going back to Pittsburgh anyway, and I think they're probably more interested in the convenience and the lack of risk than they are in getting the last dollar.
They like that, and they also like the fact that we're focused on repetitive buying. Our platform is geared to help facilitate repetitive buying, and think of us as really Match.com for private fleet backhaul capacity. And we expect the parties to transact outside. Another benefit we have for the carrier is that we've partnered with Allianz Trade. So all the payments from a load that's booked on our platform are guaranteed. That's a big deal for
Hallelujah.
Yeah. I mean, so Sherwin-Williams doesn't have to worry about who are the good guys and the bad guys in the rough and tumble world of freight. They just know if they work with Private Fleet Net Zero, they're going to get paid.
So talk about that guarantee. So that, I think in Europe, a lot of times they have that insurance in effect. So business gets done. Here in the U.S., we tend to just trust all of our partners, which for the most part has worked really well. But again, freight fraud, cybersecurity, cargo theft, it's very real right now. And I think if you can take the risk out, I think companies are going to say, yeah, risk-free. If it costs me a few dollars, I don't care.
Right. So we're very excited about that. One of the largest private fleets requested that we add payment guarantee to our platform, and we did that. We're now finding that that's working and something that almost all the fleets value, and they nod their head, they like it. So from the fleet's point of view, they just tell us their lanes. They can do it any time. They can change those lanes anytime. They only accept the load offers that they want. They payments guaranteed, and by joining, they get a preference over people that join later.
Yeah. So let's talk about emissions for a second. So we all want reduced emissions. Again, we're here at Long Beach. Long Beach is expecting that everybody who delivers to the port or picks up at the port is going to have lower emissions. But this is one of those places where that fleet, they say, well, we're going to go there and we're going to go back, whether we're empty or not. How do my emissions numbers get better? I still had to drive from Pittsburgh to Chicago and back.
Well, a great example of that is the dray carriers in the Chicago area, right? They are coming back from Indianapolis back to Chicago. 90% of the time, they're empty. That's so wasteful, not just of emissions, but of the truck and the driver and all the gasoline and the fuel and everything. So by working with Private Fleet Net Zero, we help fill those empty backhauls to everybody's benefit.
Wait, even for containerized freight?
For containerized freight, we're putting van loads inside of reefers. We're putting van loads inside of containers. Everyone's aware of what's going on, so there's never a surprise. We make that very clear. But what we're doing is we're doing things that deeply experienced people are doing. We're making this commonplace to take highly sophisticated techniques on trucking and trucking capacity and making this available to everybody.
One of the common themes on my podcast is partner up. So if I'm a broker, I am partnering with the trucking companies that I work with. I'm also partnering with my transportation management system provider. Might have outsourced people in the Philippines or Colombia. I got my outsourced work partner. I think everybody's starting to look and say, I need visibility tools. Those are partners. And I think this is just another partnership that you need to add. And by the way, Cargo Chief, your other company, that is a partner to, I don't know how many, but I'm guessing thousands of brokers.
Yeah, there's over 1,000 buyers on that platform, and they help, and Cargo Chief helps someone buy truckload capacity from their existing for-hire fleets, make sure they get someone who's trusted, and not a theft, some guy who's a thief on the TAT load board that will take your load and go to Mexico, sell it, and you'll never hear from them again.
So this is just, again, I keep thinking, the big guys, they already have this. So if you're one of the 25,000 brokers that is not in the top 50, just recognize they're doing this. And by the way, I remember when I was still in the logistics business day to day, I remember the first time I gave a price and I thought, that's a good price. We're not making very much money. And somebody came in well below our costs. And I said, what the hell? Oh, what happened? And somebody said, it's got to be a backhaul. And I remember the shock when somebody described to me, I was running the company, but I was new to the business. Right. And I go, we got to get some of those backhauls.
It's a big deal.
And they go, it's not easy to get it. And it's a rare commodity for companies that don't do the enormous volumes. If you're doing enormous volumes, you're used to the backhaul and you know how to manage it. You have the technologies.
A giant brokerage that buys literally billions of dollars of freight every year, they have a whole team of people that are specifically dedicated to arranging backhaul capacity, and they usually do it incredibly, surprisingly, manually. So our system automates it for the mega brokers, and we make it available to the large and mid-sized brokers.
So at its peak, during COVID, I think we had 31,000 brokers. That's according to my buddy Kevin Hill over at Brush Pass Research. Now there's 25,000 brokers, so we lost some. It seems like we're losing fewer and fewer as the months go by, so hopefully we hit bottom and we're slowly coming out of this. But I've talked to people this week, we don't expect to come out of this anytime soon. This the longest freight recession in history, 3.5 years. There's no boom in sight.
Right.
And so if you're going to be in business, you have to find better ways. By the way, I mentioned Kevin Hill. Talked to him the other day. He said the top I asked him to look into it. Somebody told me the top 50 brokers are growing much faster than the rest, which makes some sense. But I asked him, I said, what are the margins at right now? And he said, down to 12% from 14 to 16%. Also, the overall price for a truck went down. So you have a smaller margin on a smaller number.
Right.
So there's a lot of brokers struggling right now. And so talk about your solution in how I go about implementing. Well, first off, so I make a couple $100 more or $100 more on every load I'm doing.
Yeah, so we work very easily with brokers. So we connect with them usually through an API. We're happy to discuss that specifically with any interested brokers. And then when their team enters a new load into their transportation management system, they're not doing anything differently. That load comes to us automatically. We then use multi-patent pending technology and some artificial intelligence to say which of the 10,000 lanes is this load a match for. We have 17 different criteria that we do. It's doing all this is in a large computer up in the cloud. And then we send off the offer to the private fleet on behalf of the broker. And we're doing a lot of sophisticated things called dynamic carrier pricing, where we'll adjust the price being offered to the private fleet depending on the characteristics of the private fleet. We will also, and then when the private fleet receives the offer, they can accept or counter the offer, and that generates and it kicks off the negotiations. When the negotiation is set, we then generate a matching signal to both sides. And so from the broker's point of view, there's literally no extra effort. They just simply do what they're already doing, and then they just start getting capacity at 10 to 30% discount.
Just the APIs. Their API just plug into their TMS?
It would plug into their TMS, and we work with people that have a homegrown TMS. We work with a lot of the off-the-shelf TMS providers as well. We haven't had a situation yet where someone says, I can't make it work.
So it just occurred to me while you're saying that is that if I was responsible for a private fleet and I was hearing this or hearing from you, I don't want to work with 1,000 brokers. I want to work with you. So so if somebody says, hey, good idea. Well, how are you managing it? Oh, I got a spreadsheet of 1,000 companies that call me. And they go, are they all reputable? Sure.
Most of the time.
Is it guaranteed? No.
It's an email, and most of the time, the private fleet will send an email to Pete at Big Broker, and Pete goes, aha, I have it. And I'm not going to share this with my coworkers because I want this prized capacity for myself. So our system systematizes that, and if you will, democratizes this, making it available to everybody, which is really the fair thing to do.
Yeah. Well, this allows us to compete with the bigger brokers. And I think what we've seen over the last 10, 15 years is every time the big brokers get something, and I'll say they were probably first to have the transportation management systems, and then all of a sudden we had another must be 1,000 out there. But it would have been unheard of 20 years ago to have a TMS. It was like, oh, that's for the rich guys. Now everybody can have a TMS. It's unheard of that you wouldn't use one. And I think that goes for the visibility tools. That goes for all the other, I call them the killer apps, the green screens, the highways, all of those tools that we just take for granted. Those used to be just for the rich guys, just for the guys who had plenty of money, top 50. You guys, again, you did it before with Cargo Chief. You're doing it again with Private Fleet Net Zero. You're giving capability to make more money to brokers that there's no way
it's going to be table stakes, right?
Yeah. That is so common. Somebody says, yeah, visibility is table stakes. This table stakes. And every year the bar just gets higher, higher, and higher. And I do think the consolidation is going to be driven by companies that can adapt, buy the technologies they need, buy the partnerships they need, and those who don't.
Yeah, it's partnerships are key. The people that are sophisticated and thoughtful about their partnerships are going to run more efficiently, provide a higher level of service, and enjoy more margin.
So if somebody's listening, they say they're a broker, and they say, yeah, Russ, this sounds good. What does it look like? So they reach out to your team. By the way, I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, any of the links you give me, I'll put in the show notes. They reach out and talk to you and your team. What does that implementation look like? Where do you start?
So what happens is we'll ask for a 30-minute Zoom session. We'll walk them through what this is. We'll show them a live demo. And then from there, the registration for broker literally takes 5 minutes. We'll do a test load, making sure everything's connected. And then we're going to ask them to send us their API information, or they tell us who their TMS provider is, or we can even work off a report initially. And right now we have a no charge beta. So right now we're handling and doing all this at no charge until we go live, which would probably be in January. And so literally for the brokerage, they get to be on the platform enjoying these benefits, and there's literally no charge. So they just do an integration. They can send us a report. We'll work out those details with them. The registration takes 5 minutes.
So you already have a lot of data. How much more is a broker making, let's just say on a $1,000 load? What % more would they?
So we're typically matching, typically a private fleet will haul a spot load for a 10% discount, a repetitive load every Monday, say for a 30% discount. Most brokers literally are buying most lanes. Like, how often do you buy Chicago to Dallas, right? That's all the time. So most of the time when we match, we save 25%. That's a big deal for any brokerage.
One of the reasons we have the triple-headed monster, cargo theft, cybersecurity problems, and freight fraud, is because there is margin pressure. And people are starting to say, maybe I will call that guy back. He doesn't have a website, and he doesn't like to talk on the phone, but I have he texts, and yeah, maybe he's sketchy, but he's $30 cheaper. We take chances in this business because the margins aren't there. If the top priority of everyone was security, business gets a lot more expensive. And I went through this years ago, stupidly, but I had to learn. I knew that we didn't want this kind of business that we had to bid on. And it was a friend of a friend, and we won it, and it was lottery tickets. And I remember he said, "Here's the thing, Joe. These are lottery tickets. If they don't deliver by 2 days late, they deliver more than, I don't think it was 18, 24 hours, something late. I call the FBI, they call you." And I go, "That won't be a problem." Well, then my operations team said, "We can't find a truck for this, Joe. This is ridiculous. You won business that we can't fulfill." And I go, "Just figure it out. So then they come in, they go, "There's a carrier we found." And they were shaking their heads. They weren't super happy about it. I go, "We're making $50. They go, "Good enough. We'll win them over, and we'll raise the price somewhere along the line." Well, cut to the chase. I talked to the FBI a few days later.
Every broker that's been in business has the story, right? When I had Cargo Chief, I had to call the FBI to get my customer's freight out of some rail yard in Chicago. It was a disaster. Totally lost the customer.
Yeah. I called this guy because he was a friend of a friend. We had lunch together, and I said, "I know I'm not going to get any more work from you." And I said, "But I got to tell you, what you're doing is a dangerous game. You're going with the lowest bidder." And I said, and I was the lowest bidder. I couldn't find a carrier that my operations team was comfortable with. And I said, and I hope I ruined the relationship. We're not going to work together, but I wouldn't take your freight anyway. I don't want to take a chance that I'm talking to the FBI every other week. Anyway, so getting back to it, I do believe that we're taking chances in this business. Then when I say this business, the freight brokerage business, because of the margin compression. We can't find a truck that makes sense, so we take a chance.
It's scary.
Yep. So implementation, you're just connecting to my API. Is it days? Is it weeks? What is that?
Most of the time, either an API or report's done within a week or two. Not a big deal.
Do you ever go back and look at like their last month of shipments and say, here's what we might have done this for?
Oh, we go back and we meet with our parties, both carriers, the fleets, and the brokers, and say, here's what's going on the last month. Let's talk about this, and we fine tune things, and ask them about the results and things. So we're on it.
Yeah. So sometimes you're always able. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but you can say, hey, if we worked together last month, you would have made this much more money.
Right, and it's they know that. I mean, people see the value, and they like the higher quality of service for all the reasons you just pointed out.
Yeah. Well, this is an enabler, and again, I think this is a very common thing in our business. We've seen as the big boys get it, somebody, an entrepreneur like you, says, I'm going to provide that opportunity, that service to the smaller guys. And again, I think you adapt or die. Again, I think there's a lot of freight brokers in business who might be 50-something years old saying, I remember when I got an email address.
Yeah.
and now here
AOL, right?
Yeah. And now I got a tech team. But the tech team is outsourced now, and I think that's the cool thing about it. And this is a great opportunity. I'm going to do the best I can to summarize, then I want your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend Russ Jones, and we're talking about private fleet net zero. The deadhead is dead. We're trying to prevent all those deadheads, empty miles. Empty miles is horrible for the environment, and it's horrible for business. And I think the only way we can do sustainability in this business is it can't cost us money. Every one of the big brands that we work with are looking for sustainability from our industry. The government looks at us and wants us to do better. A lot of what we talked about here in Long Beach, besides cargo theft and all the other problems we have, is emissions. It's not going away. We have to do a better job, and I think we need to start measuring. Again, I always say when you start measuring, you might not have great data. Just start with miles per gallon for the truck you're using. Surmise some things. Directionally correct is better than nothing right now. And I think this all by itself is if I was presenting to somebody and I'm able to say, oh yeah, by the way, we also participate with private fleet net zero to this end. I could make a PowerPoint slide out of that. And I think it's a very impressive thing to say. We're going to save you money this way, but also you can chalk it up to better for the environment. I think I joke about it all the time on my podcast. Sustainability isn't a PowerPoint slide. It is actual action, right?
It's results, right?
Yes,
it's about results.
Yes. Action and results, my friends. So, again, your business going after empty backhauls, it's going to relieve some of the margin pressure. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening saying, yes, I have margin pressure, help me. Russ has done it before with Cargo Chief. He is doing it again with private fleet net zero. Again, also fewer emissions for everybody, and I think that's what we're all looking for. Anyway, put a big old bow on this one, Russ. Final thoughts on the topic.
So, Joe, first, thanks for having me on today. The keys are that private fleet trucks are 45% of all trucks. They're mostly empty on their backhauls. We have amassed a network of 50 fleets, and that will rapidly grow, probably be 150 in a year's time. And we have 10,000 lanes, over 25,000 trucks in our fleets already. That will rapidly grow, probably double. And we help brokers without any extra work. Your team doesn't have to do anything different. They don't have to log into something new or different. They just do what they're doing as they have. Those loads come to us. We match that to capacity that's higher quality capacity. Think of Sherwin-Williams. They're not going to steal your freight. They have more maintenance, manuals, procedures, newer trucks, better paid drivers. And then the savings are, you're talking about 10 to 30% savings. That's going to triple the net margin for any brokerage. So you're getting higher quality capacity as substantial savings. The ROI we generate for our clients is usually around a 10x ROI when we start charging. Right now, your listeners are invited to join us for our no-charge beta. And you can connect with us at www.privatefleetnz.com.
Yeah. I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, Any other links you and your go-to-market team, I'll put those in the show notes so people can reach out and talk to you. Thank you so much, Russ. I love what you're doing. And again, I think innovation is always a good idea in this business. One of the challenges I think most freight brokers have, not the big guys, I think all the others, the other 25,000 have, is they're commoditized. And they don't have anything to say. They're not cheaper. They're not better. This potentially gets them to be a little more less expensive, but also they have a story to tell.
Well, even the brokers that are, if you will, from number 5 to number 50, they've gotten a little bit of taste of the golden private fleet, and they go, oh my God, that tastes delicious. Where do I get more? We're here waiting for you.
Yeah, and by the way, we talked about this yesterday. One of the bigger companies here, I won't mention their name, one of the bigger transportation companies, they said, oh, well, we have relationships with the private fleets. Well, that's nice, but do you have a platform that connects you to them?
Right, and it's doing the electronic matching, which is the digital freight matching saves the broker time and is far more complete than giving it to Peter and seeing what Peter does.
I think we've all learned how difficult it is to have repeat business, where I say, oh, I really like those guys. I'm going to use them on a regular basis. Then a month later, like, I thought I was going to use them on a regular basis. If there's not a technology enabling it, it ain't going to happen. Anyway, I love what you guys are doing, and thank you so much for being here. And I should also say one more time, we are at the IANA Intermodal Expo. It's the Super Bowl of intermodal logistics. It is fantastic here.
Joe, thank you very much. Appreciate your time today.
Yep, and thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward.
You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.